It's Friday, July 28th. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, so I have a few things I'd like to discuss with you all in the PlayStation world that happened this past week. We'll go into our first news story regarding Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. The creative director for the game, Sean Escaji, was talking to, doing an interview with Red Bull, discussing sort of the plans for Uncharted in the future, and he had this interesting quote I'd like to share with you all. He said, "We have no immediate plans for another Uncharted game, but if there's anything this game proves is that this world is beyond Nathan Drake. There's other cast, other characters. You've got quite a vast amount of cast to pull from in the future if you so wanted." Now, there are two things that we can probably draw from this right now, which is that, number one, like we've been saying for a while now, let the series rest a little bit, and it's good that Naughty Dog's sort of reaffirming that. There's no plans to do more Uncharted in the future. Give it a rest. 4 or 5 years minimum. The other thing is that, and this is the same thing Naughty Dog has also been echoing for the past few interviews now, with multiple people within Naughty Dog have been saying this, but there's a lot of good pull from these characters in Uncharted outside of Nathan Drake, and I think that's very important because we're going to really find out once Lost Legacy comes out how well Chloe and Nadine stand on their own. This will be an Uncharted game without Nathan Drake. It'll probably be a little weird at first because it's going to play exactly the same. You would assume it's going to look exactly the same in terms of the Uncharted landscape of what we expected in 4, right? In terms of the visual presentation of the game, I guess. So it's still going to be an Uncharted game at its core, but it won't feature Nathan Drake. And let's face it, he's been a very lovable protagonist the past few years in the series, right? You think Uncharted, you think Nathan Drake. So it'll be interesting to sort of see that sort of separation and to see how well these characters stand up on their own. Moving on to more very interesting quotes that I wanted to tell you guys all about. So this is going into God of War. The game's director, Cory Barlog, was sort of discussing the future for that game, and it's kind of a question mark, but I guess we all sort of figured that this was going to be the case. But anyway, he said, in regards to the future of the game, he said, "For me, I am just trying to get this game done, but I will say that when I chose this story, I had chosen it because I already outlined and mapped out stories for multiple games. I have an arc in my head that goes well beyond this game, and everything that we are doing in God of War, to me, is very much building towards that. Like you see in the second God of War game, and it ends with Kratos going up to Mount Olympus. Everybody said that it was the stupidest decision, like, why are you doing this? Nobody wants a cliffhanger ending, but I was like, whatever, this is awesome. This is telling people more to come, this is great. And with this game, I think people know that we're going to be here for a while. Me personally, I know I've got a couple more of these in me." It's never too frequently that we see a sort of informal announcement like that. It's like, he's more or less confirming, like, oh yeah, you can expect more God of Wars, but it's like, yeah, we all knew there was going to be more God of Wars, but it's like an informal way of saying, like, hey, this, upcoming 2018 God of War, you're going to play it, and it's going to be a much more overarching story. And I guess that's the more sort of surprising news. The game's not ready for prime time yet. There's still kind of a lot about the game we don't know, realistically, so you kind of figure, is this going to be a sort of start to finish story? Will it arc further along like the original 3 God of War games did back in the day, and plus with Ascension, right, and the tie-ins with the PSP games, but that was sort of a big game, and it all sort of all those games sort of came together and met in one way or another. And so when you see a situation where this is called just God of War now, and it's doing completely new mythology and taking a vastly different direction, it was sort of a question mark as to what this game was going to be come the end of it. And now we have the answers that you can definitely expect more of them. For our final news story, another quote I would like to sort of dissect and talk about a little bit. This is Sony's Jim Ryan. He was talking to Edge magazine in an interview, and he had this to say regarding the PS4's sort of life cycle and what we can expect. "It's a very interesting question. The cultural phenomenon of regular updates to smartphones and tablets is without question, perhaps subliminally, coloring mindsets, and the days of a 13-year PlayStation 2 cycle will almost certainly never repeat themselves. But equally, a platform is a very delicate ecosystem, and if that platform is to succeed, you've got to give those who make content for it the chance to recoup on it. At the end of the day, like it or not, these are businesses. We struck, and Microsoft has as well, a good balance of innovation within the confines of the platform. Also, services which operate agnostically of particular hardware, like PlayStation Now, for example, are something you're going to see more of. I think we're only 6 months into PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's too early to tell. The Xbox One X hasn't even launched yet. I don't know if this is the way forward or not." So I guess the one thing we'd sort of like to pull away from this is Jim's comment about how, we're probably never going to see a sort of life cycle like PlayStation 2 again, where the system was pretty much manufactured, sold, and supported well over 10 years. And the PlayStation 3 is kind of still similarly in the same situation. It's just over 10 now, but it's certainly coming to that sort of demise, right? I mean, manufacturing is halting for it in various regions, so it's getting to that point, right? But PS2 was just an insane outlier in terms of if trying to compare it to anything else, right? Because even in that time frame of, say, compared to the GameCube or the Xbox, they just did nothing compared to the PS2. It was a ridiculous platform that had tons of support, lots of games. So moving into this sort of situation now where PS4 and X1 are seeing mid-cycle updates and people are even expecting full-on PlayStation 5 and whatever Microsoft called an Xbox, we're expecting those, say, 2019, 2020, the latest. Which would give it a pretty decent life cycle, but it certainly wouldn't be anything dramatically longer. I think more so it's like the demand from people nowadays, from consumers. The whole reason why the smartphone, tablet, frequent update thing really works for them is because people often want the latest and greatest. And that's not, and this is something we've said before. That's not totally translated into consoles. You can't, you're not going to expect a new console every year, but certainly maybe a mid-cycle update. And it's the same situation as smartphones and tablets. You don't have to buy the upgrade right away, but it's an option that's there. But what we can't get into is sort of the crossover, right? Like, well, let's say we have that big leap to PlayStation 5 or to the next Xbox. The point where it would be a software cutoff. Like, there would be PS5 games, you can't play them, unless you have a PlayStation 5. That software cutoff, right? Where's the sort of crossover there? If you look back previous generation, PS2, and it would be just PS2, let's face it, because, GameCube and Xbox just were seldomly, tossed away pretty quickly, moving into 360 and Wii. So, say for the PlayStation 2, that sort of crossover, PS2 still lived a pretty healthy life well into the PS3's life cycle. But that was a different time. 2006, that was a very different time when the PlayStation 3 launched. And it's actually somewhat surprising to me that PS3 and 360 are dying as quickly as they did. I actually would have expected them to last a little slightly bit longer. And part of the reason why I thought that was because these were, those were the first systems with true online ecosystems where they had a marketplace to buy a bunch of downloadable content. They had a full friends list, achievements, messaging, party chat, things like that. Unless you wanted the newest games, you could still sort of stay on that and just kind of enjoy that online environment for a while and buy tons of content. And I figured there was still going to be a healthy amount of games being developed for those platforms, but surprisingly, no. People just jumped immediately to PlayStation 4 and X1. And that just tells you kind of the day and age that we're living in, where people want to, try out the newest thing, or they're just ready to get rid of old technology. Before, that was not the case. People played their PlayStation 2s for a long damn time. And, admittedly, probably it was also because PS3 was too damn expensive, too. So people were waiting for PS2s or PS3s to, be affordable at that point. But since we have this new sort of mid-cycle thing, and with Pro so far, you can kind of see that it's not the same situation as a complete hardware jump, right? Since you don't have to buy a Pro isn't necessarily, selling the most right now, and then base PS4 just falls off a cliff. Like, that's not the case. But say when we do have a PlayStation 5 where that's completely new software that you can't play unless you have that PlayStation 5, which it would be a healthy, 5-6 years, probably 6 or at the most 7 when the next PlayStation hardware launches, then a lot of people that, say, didn't buy a Pro would certainly be very comfortable with buying the next hardware, right? And it would probably be a thing where people would jump right away. And I guess you would probably expect X1 and PS4 to be abandoned just as fast, if not faster, than the PlayStation 3 and 360. That would seem to be sort of a good balance. People got very fatigued and tired of PS3 and 360. People felt that was too long, and people are too afraid of systems that would update every 2 years, which I still think will not happen. 3 at the most. And those are just, again, incremental updates, something you don't have to do. So that might be a good balance, and we'll see if that's how it's going to play out. Those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. I got nothing for you, nothing really going on. I would love to film some new videos, but I'm not going to lie to you, I'm playing way too much Persona 5 right now. So until Persona 5 is finished, I'm not going to be filming anything new other than the Let's Plays or LTPS. I'm glad you all understand that. I like video games too much. I'm sorry. And that's pretty much it. That's all I've got for you. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan, but I can thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.